everyone. So my name is Devrie DeMarco. I'm a managing director at MediaLink. I have the honor of moderating this incredible session with these three amazing executives. We're here to talk about, in this session, the evolving relationship between agencies and retail media networks, and ultimately how they are supporting the brands that they work with, and then ideally, right, the end customer, so that shared customer that they have. So I'm sure a lot of you have heard a lot of retail media stats probably over the last couple of days. The industry is growing. Retail media networks are expected to grow 20% year over year. But one interesting fact that I heard was, and saw from eMarketer, said that from a combined perspective, retail media networks are going to, as of 2027, are going to be bigger than CTV, audio, and traditional television. So that is incredible growth and incredible things that we're seeing in this industry. And so what we want to do is kick off first. Marci, I want to start with you. All right. So with all this incredible growth, obviously there's a set of incredible opportunities, but there's a lot of challenges in some cases as well to capture all of this opportunity. Tell us a little bit about your perspective, at Campbell's and what you're seeing inside of your organization and how you work with agencies and retail media networks.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I think one of the best things that has come out of this is really a breaking down of silos. So if you think about traditional CPG, we have shopper marketing sitting on one side of the house, typically in sales. You have integrated marketing or activation, national media, whatever you want to call it, sitting in marketing. And typically those, or historically, those have operated very separate and siloed. But with the onset of retail media, it really forces that breaking down and how do we come together. Right now, I'm sitting next to the head of shopper and e-commerce from our team. We do fully integrated work sessions. And so that breaking down of silos, I think, is one of the best things that has come out of this. And as a result, I think two things that really elevate our work is, one, audience planning, right? How do we think about audiences and do one holistic audience plan so that we're really thinking about how upper funnel, lower funnel work together and connect? And then also, when you think about consumer journeys, previously the shopper team worked from a path to purchase, the national media team worked with the consumer journey. And what we've done starting a couple of years ago was really step back and do a holistic consumer journey. So it is inclusive of upper, middle, lower, and it really looks at how does shoppability also play out across that journey. And we all work from one single source of truth about the consumer. And so those are just some of the ways that we've changed how we work internally. And I think it's all driven by this advent of retail media really coming to the forefront.
I love it. And Megan, in your role, right, at dentsu, you're part of Newsstream, the retail media practice. You're obviously working with a lot of brands, a lot of retail media networks. What are you seeing as best practices in terms of working with all of these partners in this ecosystem?
Yeah, I think actually, Marci, what you brought up about putting the consumer at the center of everything that we're doing, as you're breaking down silos and thinking about your audiences across all of those different areas, that's what the consumers are asking for too. And that's certainly something that we are encouraging our brands and retailers, because we work across the buy side and the sell side, to really think about. We are in a very unique moment with retail media where we can very clearly see that both the advertisers and the retail media networks, we all have the same goal when we're going to market. I think that's really powerful. It speaks to the growth that we're seeing in the space and how much it's going to eclipse connected TV and audio and traditional TV, because the buyers and the sellers in retail media all have the same objective. It's ultimately trying to reach the shared customer in a very compelling and impactful way and get her to buy more of those products in store. And so when we can align those objectives, it makes everybody so much more powerful in the investment decisions that you're making, in the ad product decisions that you're making, and what you bring to market for your retail media network.
Yeah, so Michelle, and building off of what Megan said, if you start thinking about, you've got a storied career in this industry. You were on the agency side, you were on the marketing, the enterprise marketing side at Albertsons, and now you're, working in retail media. How have you seen, all of these, knowing that the shared customer is so important and how busy and how crazy this industry is moving along? What have you seen to be, what kind of challenges and things are you looking to overcome in your role?
Well, first off, thank you. I think for me, understanding the shared customer is something that I feel very strongly about. And it is because of my background in working in agencies and on the brand side, and now being a part of a retail media network that is really open to reinvention, that we can celebrate this shared customer. The challenge, though, is the scale, because we all want to do right by the customer. So how do we manage for that scale? At Albertsons Media Collective, we have an initiative where we are bringing in generative AI to really help with our media planning, optimization, and creative in order to really leverage some really unique data insights. So we are thinking about a customer-centric approach, but helping technology to bridge that scalability.
I love that. One of the things we talked a little bit about was, besides things like AI, I feel like everybody's talking about AI and how that's pushing whatever industry forward, right? But I think one thing that we've seen with retail media networks is one of the big challenges to overcome has been standardization. Can you guys talk a little bit about, what your thoughts are on how important and critical it is for the industry to standardize?
Yeah. You want to go first?
Yeah, I can start.
I know you're passionate about it.
Yes, very passionate. So from the buy side, like the brands that we work with at Dentsu are really focused on navigating the complexity and the volume of retail media networks in the landscape. Over the past 4 years, there's been moments where we've seen a new entrant every single month, which is insane for brands to be able to navigate. In order for our brands to be successful, in order for us as Dentsu to be successful in advising them, we need to have standardization across the board. I think what the collective is doing in supporting IAB and building out the standardization so that buyers can make informed decisions is really important. And I think it also helps retail media grow faster because it allows retail media to be on the same level as every other media channel. So as a buyer, I can make a very smart decision on moving money away from connected TV and into retail media networks because I know with standardization that it's the same types of ad formats, it's being held to the same completed viewability metrics, and it's easier for me to know how far my dollar can go in one channel versus another.
Yeah, I would just agree, because I think there's nothing worse than when you're looking at results and then everything has to be caveated because it's calculated this way for one and this way for another and this way for a third, and then that doesn't match any of your other media. And so it ends up becoming so many caveats that you're like, okay, wait, what did we actually learn? And so I think it's really key to be able to have that standardization. And also then when you think about, for us, retail data, right? The data side of it, what data is working better, so that it's not just about the placements, but it's also about the data that you're using and that standardization as well from that standpoint.
Yeah, and Michelle, I don't know if everybody knows the work that you guys have been doing that Albertsons has been doing in standardization. Do you want to give a little quick?
Sure. So, everyone said it best on this panel, but Albertsons Media Collective recognized the need for standardization. It adds complexity, and we know in support of growth of retail media network, you have to bring standardization. So we released our positioning on standardization and now have turned over that work to the IAB to champion and act as an advisory. But it is to solve the challenges that both Marci and Megan demonstrated.
One thing that I'm passionate about is people and talent. And after being on the agency side, Marci and I worked together years ago, and being on the brand side and being in the media side, one thing that is obviously as this industry is growing and it's so fast paced, it's trying to find talent and folks to work inside these organizations. So I'd love to learn a little bit about what you look for when you're hiring, given the complexity that retail media is bringing. What kinds of things do you look for in candidates and in talent? You want to start, Megan?
Yeah, so I think generally speaking, this space is young enough and small enough that there are a lot of hard qualities that you can look for in candidates. But what I really look for, first and foremost, is curiosity. So finding people that are genuinely excited about the space, that walk into stores and recognize that's advertising that I'm seeing, or getting an ad on Meta, YouTube, Facebook, and thinking, is that going to help me convert? And approaching it from a consumer standpoint makes it so much easier to translate it back strategically into the work that we do every day. I just think that's the best thing, because it is advertising at the end of the day. Like, this is all teachable work that we do. And I'd much rather have somebody on the team who wants to get in and figure it out, collaborate, and just be excited about the space.
I agree. Curiosity is key, right? Not only about digging into the data and being curious about what you can unlock with it, but then also what's coming next. But the other thing that we talk a lot about is people who can connect dots. So it's really easy when you have a role, you get, your head's down, you're doing your work, but it's looking up and connecting the dots across, right? National media to shopper, looking at different data sources and knowing, when to bring the right person. Who do I need to bring into the room for the discussion? Who do I need to connect with so that I can build a better experience? And that connecting of the dots, sticking with the C letter, is really critical for us, and it is what we look for. And just, because that's something you cannot teach. It's just a way you're wired.
I mean, both of those are great examples. I would say what is unique about the collective is, we have the luxury of our customers giving us the consent of their data and their shopping behaviors. And we take that very seriously in terms of activating against those behaviors that drive outcomes. And for me, what I look for is someone who is very curious in what behavior is going to align to a certain objective. And that is translation, that is curiosity, but it's wanting to dive deep into behaviors.
So you mentioned, Marci, connecting the dots, and I think breaking down silos earlier. What do you think?
I feel like I'm a builder.
I know you're a builder. I love it. No, I think, part of agencies and retail media networks and brands working more closely together, I think there's internal silos that happen. There's external silos when you're working with partners. What do you think are the best ways for this group to understand what they can do to break down silos that they may be seeing in their everyday life?
Yes. One of the things that we talk a lot about is using the same language. So right now, when you say retail media, it means everything and nothing. It's like digital, in 2010. And so what we've really tried to do is, what do we mean when we say retail media? We started delineating retail media from retail data so that we can actually talk about them separately, and kind of where you are in the mall when you use those two different phrases, so that clarity. And a lot of times what we found is people are using the same words, but they just have totally different meanings. So I think really making sure that you're using the same language so that everyone is on the same page is key. One of the other things that we also work really hard at, as a CPG client who sells through customers, you have salespeople who have relationships, you have shopper teams who have relationships, now you've got national media teams that have relationships. And so how do we really think about who needs to know what when, and how do you make sure that you're connected, but that doesn't mean everybody has to sit in every meeting together. I would say we're not perfect at that, but we are definitely on a journey to get better. And the third thing, I think, for the other thing that we're working on is data strategy. And so when you think about data strategy, for retail media network partners, being open to clean rooms and really understanding that data journey that we're on, and how we can work together to unlock learnings and insights. We were just talking about it ahead of time, but really be on the journey together.
Michelle, anything to add on your side?
No, I think for us, what we see as sort of the evolution of the retail media network is exactly the conversation that Marci and I were having. Is we know that there are multiple brand objectives, and how can we really partner together to build learning agendas or experimentation around audiences. Retail media networks can provide sort of near real-time results in terms of sales with our customers, to test messaging, to test behaviors. And we really, feel it's our responsibility to partner with brands to elevate what they want to achieve for their business as a whole.
Amazing. Megan, as a consultant, I know, and as an agency, person, I think, there's so much about what Michelle and Marci just said about defining, having definitions for some of the words and being able to translate things. Is there anything else or any advice that you would give, given I think it's actually harder in many ways than it sounds? Yes. And so any advice that you can give to this group?
It's funny when you said that. I think about so many of our presentations and our conversations on both sides with retailers and brands start with like a handful of slides that just say, when we say retail media, this is what we mean. And I think for the brands that we serve at Dentsu, it's also very interesting to be able to parse together those different definitions between what a brand thinks and then what all of the different retailers think. So again, to come back to the complexity point and why we want to help connect dots and be curious and actually ask the question of, you said retail media, but is this what you meant by it? That transparency is really important, and helping your clients, brand and retailers alike, be able to come together and think that way is really critical.
Good. So what's next? What do you think is next for your company, for your teams, and for the industry, given how fast everything is moving?
I mean, for us, it'll continue to be experimentation, really making sure that we've got a strong learning agenda. There's so much going on. AI, yes, but that's just one of them. And so it really is making sure we've got a really clear learning agenda. We know where we're experimenting, and that it's not just throwing a lot of stuff out there, but it's really thoughtful and building toward getting smarter, getting faster, getting better. I'm looking at one of my agency partners, someone from my team is here. So I know they're all on the path with me, but for us, it is like really making sure we've got the clear view so that we can keep track of everything going on in this space and keep up with everything going on.
To expand on that, I know how important testing and learning, we've all talked about how critical that is. Some companies look at it like a 70-20-10, right? 70 is tried and true, 20 is right, and then the 10% is innovation. Can you elaborate on how you think about testing and learning and what you guys are doing internally before we go to these guys on what's next?
Yeah. I mean, 70-20-10, I think, is always kind of like the formula that you put out there. I would say we don't hold ourselves specifically to that, but we really start the year with what do we know, what do we need to learn, and then how do we actually build that out? And that's just where we start. What did we learn last year? What do we need to learn this year so that everything builds? We use crawl, walk, run a lot as well, so that you know where you're starting and you don't try to bite off too much. And I think that the key for me from before I had learning agendas to when I started working with them was before we would just try a lot of stuff. And so you'd have some good nuggets, but it didn't really add up to anything. And the learning agenda really just forces the focus and makes sure it matters.
Michelle, anything to add on the testing and learning side?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to the data that a retail media network can help provide brands, but it's having the openness to the conversations that it really takes both sides. So agencies really help in that translation, brands who are open to sharing their larger testing agendas and then giving us an opportunity because we know our shoppers best. Retail media networks ultimately sit inside of a retailer. And so if we are able to help with that translation, we do have that shared shopper, but we can help in that translation to activate.
Great. Megan, what's next?
So we've talked a lot about data, and I think that as retail media continues to expand and evolve at like a lightning pace is what we've been seeing, we're very excited about retail media going beyond just media. I think there's quite a bit more opportunity to think about data more flexibly. I think it's great that you're separating retail data versus retail media. We've used media as a mechanism to get to the data so far in retail media, but it doesn't need to stay that way. There's so many more interesting ways to connect with your consumers and make it easier for the consumers to enjoy the advertising. I think it's really good for brands and advertisers and retailers what retail media has built to date. I don't think it's always great for the consumer to be getting a whole bunch of ads that maybe aren't personalized, that are coming from all of the different grocery stores that exist in your regional footprint. And ultimately what removes that friction and makes it easier for a consumer to see an ad and act on it in a meaningful way is knowing that person in a clean and transparent way and finding the right connection point with her. And that's purely enabled through data. Clean rooms, loyalty, all of those programs that make the connection closer is where I think we are heading.
Great. Michelle, let's end with you. What's next?
Sure. So I think both Marci and Megan talked about the complexity, and we understand the complexity. We also understand the value that we bring as the retail media network. For us, as we're thinking about those behaviors, we're trying to be more customer first. And when I mean customer, I mean to our CPGs and our agencies in how we approach our product development, because there are different brand objectives that need to be met and can be met. And an example of this is how we are building our Trade Desk product, where yes, you can activate directly with the retail media network, but at the same time, you can use audiences to power CTV through Trade Desk based off of your brand objective and how you want to reach that customer.
Amazing. Well, we are out of time, but I want to thank each of you for being with us today, and thank you guys for coming.
Thanks, Devrie.